Yes, thank you for inviting me. It's really interesting to be here. I first tried to talk about ornament, but then I realized that you will see some ornaments, but it was too difficult to change the story of our work into ornaments. So what I'm trying to tell you is how engagement and locality goes through sustainability to happiness. And I'm going to talk about projects that we've done together with Helena and Jan-Erik. We started to work together for, I think it was 23 years ago, as students, and we've been continuously working, not full-time, but still continuously together. We also formed an NGO called Locality, which provides architecture for people in need. During these years, we've been working in several different places. We started out in Senegal, and at the moment we have a project which is being built in southern Tanzania. And I'm also working on my PhD in Zanzibar in Tanzania. So it has mostly been Tanzania in the last years. Engagement is the first step, and I think in the moment in this world where there is an urgent need of sustainability on all levels, it's really important to get the contribution of everybody. And if people are not invited to the process of change, there of course won't be easy to get a contribution. I think also in our environment, but more even so in the development situations, there's different levels of the society, and usually how things are planned, and in architecture it happens on the higher level, while the people on the lower level are not involved very often. And if you're not involved in the process or engaged, then it might be difficult also to feel ownership of a project. In our first project in Senegal, the moment when we showed the project as a model that we had brought with us to Senegal, we realized that the people really had kind of been part of the project and felt that it's their building. They invited people to come. They talked in Wolof and invited people from the street to come and look at their building. And we also learned in that process that to use drawings is very difficult, because it's not very easy to read from a two-dimensional drawing to read a three-dimensional construction. And the level of engaging people varies a lot. In a project we did in northern Tanzania, a shelter home for victims of domestic violence, we first tried to organize workshops with the actual common users to be of the building, but the only kind of input we got that they want a safe place. They want a safe place, and we knew that, but to make architecture out of this common only was not very, or it felt that we didn't get a lot of input, because the need was just so big that then to comment on colors or what sorts of spaces wasn't kind of on the top list for these users. But then instead we collaborated a lot with the lawyers of the NGO we worked together with, and as they were also working in the building, it also felt as an important collaboration. And for a hostel for girls in southern Tanzania, in Iringa, it's a building which is being built right now. We started by meeting the village elderly and discussing about the whole situation of hostels, and the need for hostels for girls is that the villages are situated very far from each other, so the girls need to live in villages close to the school, where they usually rent a space, and a very high percentage of the girls get pregnant before they get out from secondary school. So this is the reason that both the government and the NGO that we work with wants to build particularly girls' hostels around the schools. And in this we worked a lot with the girls. And at first they were really timid, but then we tried to have all kinds of ice-breaking games, and in the end we got quite a lot of input of the girls. And what is a big challenge is often to find the right methods, and that's also what I'm doing my PhD about, is for finding methods that are smooth and fast, because the projects usually are, you can't put a lot of time in engaging with people because of money restrictions and time restrictions. So trying to find methods that work and both kind of engage yourself as a designer empathically, but also make people feel that they contribute, even if it's not so that they are together in all the meetings and get a very, very strong role in the process. And also in this project we took the model back after having had the sessions, we took the model back and got comments from the girls, and we also asked the girls to choose their favorite colors and then paint the doors in the colors they chose. So each room will have a different door color and also window frame color. And this is the plan that we ended up with. The building got smaller in the process. You started with a double size building, but now it's just a form of an atrium. And in Mokatam in Cairo we designed a learning center for children of the garbage collectors of Cairo. And this project unfortunately got stopped, but we're just to get our building permission when the revolution started, and now it's still standing, but a few months ago we were in contact and they still hope to get the project going. And in this process we felt it was important to involve the children of the community, to share with them the importance of having a learning center, because what often happens in these communities is that children stop going to school and stay at home and sort garbage instead, helping their parents. And the site of the building was the only green spot in a very big area. So we focused on the garden and asked the children to draw pictures of what they would like to be in the garden in the learning center. And then we wanted to use the local tradition of mosaics and use these drawings above the hand washing spots, because there will be plenty of hand washing spots. That's sort of one of the main things the NGO we work with wanted to teach the children to wash their hands often. So here is the first ornament you can see. And I have a few films in this presentation, we had our work was presented in the Venice Biennale 2 years ago, and these films were made for the Biennale exhibition. I hope this will Did something happen? No? But the sound is
se kaivos Locality kaupungissa, joka on zappaleenien ja ruskiinpitäjien yhteisö.
Sehän oli ihan huikea kokemus, koska koko tämä kaupungissa on niin kierrätystehdas.
Tämä rakennus on suunniteltu sellaiseen järjestöön kuin
Et is an Egyptian non-governmental organization that was founded in 1984 to work among garbage collectors in the city of Cairo.
نفس التجربة نفس الكلام عن المسألة نفس دكتور
Niillä oli jo suunnitelma tähän paikkaan. Paikallinen arkkitehti oli laittanut iso pötkön tähän niin, että kaikki isot puut olisi jouduttu kaatamaan. Ja sitten se oli vaan semmoinen niin tyyppikoulutyyppinen, niin ne halusi jotain vähän egyptiläisempää ja sitten pyysi 3 suomalaista arkkitehtiä siinä. Tässä on siis 3 osaa tässä rakennuksessa. Täällä on päiväkoti-osa ja siinä on 8 luokkahuonetta. Tämä on siis pääsisäkäynti. Tuolta päin tästä. Ja täällä on toimistotalo ja aikuiskoulutus. Täällä on muutama luokka ja sitten on toimistot alakerrassa. Ja täällä on tämmöinen kattoterassi, mitä voi käyttää myös juhliin ja sitä voi vuokrata ulos. On aika yleistä, että kattoja käytetään tähän tarkoitukseen. Ja siitä on sitten yhteys tähän päiväkoulurakennukseen, jossa on sitten enemmän kerroksia ja aika paljon luokkahuoneita, jossa sitten on omat pienet takapinnat. Fasadimateriaali on paikallista kiveä, sitä on käytetty pitkään, pyramidit ja tehty siitä. Tällä alueella on kehittelty kierrätystä todella pitkään.
Pyritään tämän kierrätyksen esinostamisen kautta nostamaan myös sammaleiden asemaa sillä tasolla, että se mitä he tekevät siellä saisi niin kuin arvostusta.
Paikallisesti on käytetty aika paljon mosaikkeja. Siellä missä pestään kädet, niin tehdään näistä paikallisten lasten piirustuksista sellaisia isoja mosaikkeja.
Moving to the next locality. And actually, Jan-Erik was showing this text of Musawi where she says that globalization and modernization kind of takes away the need for ornament or for showing what the local is, and I would be of a totally different opinion, thinking that this is when it's even more important to underline the locality and the local cultural differences. And it's also a loss in the sense of sustainability, because if we can maintain the local tradition of building and using local materials and local knowledge of how a building functions, it's usually much more sustainable in that way, and also probably the aesthetics are more durable if they kind of fit into the culture where a building exists. What in this project, this is the first project in Senegal. In Senegal, usually buildings are built with, traditional buildings are built with thatched roofs. But in the cities, it's nowadays forbidden to use thatched roofs. So what we try to do is to make it reverse, to use the thatched carpet on the inside as an insulating ceiling, and having a ventilation gap in between, and then metal sheet on top of the roof. And what we also try to do is to find out local handicraft, what is existing locally, and see if that can be done in details or in bigger scale, and in that way attach the building to the local culture. And then another sense of locality is how people use space, which differs quite a lot from culture to culture. And in the Wolof house, I don't know, yeah, you can see, this is a traditional Wolof family house in a village. And this is the street outside or the walkway, and there's also always a bench outside where you can sit and watch what happens in the village. Then there's the main gate, and there's also always a barrier so you can't see into the main courtyard. So there is a privacy. This space becomes semi-public, not public. And then each of the huts have, of course, the private interior, but then there is a private back, like a totally private backyard. And in this case, this is the husband of the family, and then the wives have their own huts with their private backyard behind. And the similar pattern can be seen in the city structure, even if it's changed a bit, but that's also how the city homes are formed, with the backyard, a more private side of the outdoor spaces inside the compound. And we tried to follow a little bit this structure in our plan of the women's center. And the backyards are often used for cooking or household activities, and they're more women's space, or laundry and private hygiene as well. And in Zanzibar, a similar structure, the way of placing the rooms is different, but there also the outdoor spaces are used very much, and the backyard is the domain of the women and children. And I've been using a method of asking people to mark places in their homes with stickers. And here in this picture, there's a small red sticker here, which the red stickers are for things which are dislikes, and then green stickers for what is liked. And in this sense, the boy who lives in this room complained about the lack of ventilation, that there is not a possibility to get a cross ventilation in his room because the space behind this window is built in. So to figure out which are the things that function in a home and which are the things that could be changed, I have used this method. And then talking to people, in this case we talked to an old architect in Moshi, in northern Tanzania, and asked him about the traditional way of living in the Kilimanjaro region, and he was showing us how his compound was structured when he grew up. And using his knowledge, we tried to create a similar way of moving from space to space also in our shelter project. And in this case, there was a more public yard this is the office building by the street, and then a more private building behind for the actual shelter. And unfortunately, it's only the shelter part which is built until now. We're still hoping for funding for the office part. And this is the shelter, and we planted a tree which is hopefully growing very fast to be the central part to be gathered around in the building. And as I said, ornament has never really been an objective in itself, but has always, in our project, has another purpose. And in this case, the kanga, which is a cloth that women wear as skirts, or also like around the body and using as clothes, has a message on it. And in the tradition, you choose your kanga, the message on your kanga to talk for something you believe in, or to communicate with your neighbor, for instance. It can have a message like, don't look at your neighbor's husband, for instance, and then a woman can walk around with that in front of her neighbor if she's jealous, or there's like totally funny messages as well. But the women, in this case for the gate, where we decided to put the kanga, the women chose to have a message which is equal rights to all is the basis for development. So that's stand on the gate.
This last picture, was it kind of glass inside those holes? Or?
Yeah, bottles.
Bottle, yeah.
recycled bottles, so used as glass bricks.
Sorry, used as?
Glass bricks, like instead of glass bricks.
Okay. They are very ornamental.
They are,
Yeah.
yes. I agree. Yes, this picture is from Cairo. This is how it looks in the place. And of course, in this project, sustainability is clear. There is a clear connection. As also, these people actually are probably world champions in recycling. They recycle up to 99% of all the garbage from Cairo. So with this project, we hope to be able also to advocate their case and to teach people how things could be recycled. And it was interesting that I saw a documentary also on this community, and they had got some trip to go to Scotland to look at the recycling facilities in Scotland, and then when they follow him, they were like, but what is that thing? Now it goes there, and that we could have taken this one. And so all the things that were kind of in Scotland were not used, they had a way how to use that. So they take all kinds of plastic, and then they sort it in according to the colors, and then it's sent to. Then there's another middleman that cuts it in pieces, and then it's sent to, for instance, to China to make textile for sport clothes. And so all those different steps are planned ahead for. And what we hope to be able to do with recycling in our project is to show that actually recycling is something which is not a sign of being poor, that it can be done in a way which is beautiful, and hoping that it wouldn't go such a long way as in the West, where we've been waiting 50 years that it's cool again to recycle after the war, where we were forced to do it. And in the Senegal building we used car rims as ventilation openings, and actually what you said about, I was writing that ornament can be a force that transforms conflicting elements. I think it fits quite well actually in these cases where the elements in itself doesn't really, probably people wouldn't think they are beautiful, but then when they are placed as an ornament they change the perception of what they actually are.
Looks very nice.
And the same with the bottles, the beer bottles. There was this, we had a big argument with the contractor who was a Muslim and didn't want to drive around with beer bottles in his car because there was a huge amount of beer bottles needed. But then in the end, when he saw the result, he was really happy about it. So actually the element used for the ornament can transform the whole existence of it when it becomes an ornament. And for the courtyard space, we designed this space which was semi-outdoor, and it is the space which is most used in the whole center. So this is something I think related to sustainability, how so many buildings are built that are totally enclosed and has air conditioning and are unsustainable at all in climates where you actually could stay outdoors all the time. And that's also something which is kind of very easy and sustainable.
And those squared holes, are they functional also somehow?
They also ventilate, and then there's the possibility to see out from inside. They're also ornaments. And we are happy about the result. Like, this building is still in use after 18 years and in use for the same purpose as it was. And that's not very often happening in development projects. So we feel that as a good achievement. And we believe that if people can feel at home in a place, it contributes to shaping social contacts, and that also helps, hopefully, people to have an interest in their surroundings and to contribute to the sustainable development. Now I'm jumping back to Tanzania and to the hostel building. There we were really excited because this was an area where the earth actually is good enough for doing construction only with earth. And this is how the villages look around. But then when we started to collaborate with the local NGO, they were totally against it because they said this is how their grandparents' sheds looks like, and they don't want to put the girls in sheds. And we tried to explain how it's possible to make the earth in a beautiful way, and you can polish it and it can become like Venetian stucco walls, but no, not earth. So unfortunately not yet this, but we still hope for the next building, that there will be many hostels built, that we will be able to build one in earth. But the bird brick is the material they use the most, and now the villagers have contributed by bringing bricks for the construction. And still we're not doing it totally with burnt bricks. It's only the foundation which is burnt brick, the others are compressed earth bricks, but they have some cement in them. But for the next building we're now trying to change the cement to lime, which will make the bricks a little bit less strong, but it's still possible, and then it will become totally sustainable. Happiness was also one of the subjects of this seminar, and somehow, I think that if you do something which is meaningful, it makes you. If it doesn't make you happy, it's still having a meaningful life might be enough sometimes. Happiness is maybe not nothing that can be a kind of continuous, durable state of being. But what we're trying to do in our project is to engage people so that they understand that their contribution is meaningful. And through that, I guess we can bring a little bit of happiness also to the process. And for instance, when involving local people in the construction, that helps, enhances entrepreneurship locally, and then it also activates the community, and it also informs us about what are the methods of doing things locally, and usually that's a more sustainable way than if we would bring the methods from outside. And where we're striving is to create spaces that somehow resonates with the users and through their involvement in the process. And our endeavor is to make buildings which are somehow timeless and aesthetical locally, or seen from a local point of view. And through that also, if a building is considered fitting the environment and people feel at home, probably it will stay for a longer time, and people will be happy to continue using that building. And that's also sustainable. And somehow beauty is probably an essential human need, and that also, when you're surrounded with something that you can consider beautiful, it gives you some sort of dignity, and if you can bring that dignity to the mundane or to your, so to say, normal surroundings, it probably lightens up your spirit somehow. I don't know, but that's how I feel personally. And also if you can bring kind of a connection to the hands that produce the place. I believe that is something that is comparing like these new housing areas which are done with the element structures, compare that to handmade buildings. There's something really valuable that if we still can see the kind of legacy of a hand in a project. And if the building fits its users, it could maybe be seen as wearing something comfortable, that you wear clothes that you feel good in, and that makes you feel strong. And in that sense, I think also a building can be compared to garments, that is like the skin, an outer skin around you. And this somehow could be felt very strongly in the Senegalese project, where also women dress up flawlessly, always. Like how, regardless income, regardless social status, they're always have clean clothes and in beautiful colors that go together with each other. And in this way, they also, I think, took the building with dignity and pride. And it was the only public building in the area. And first we had planned to kind of to keep it invisible, so that it wouldn't be so like a sign that here is the women's center. And when we proposed this to the women, it was like, no way, we have to have a visible, beautiful building, and that's why we decided to paint it red. And actually, it's still 15 years later when this picture is taken. It's still the only public building in this area. Probably, and it's still standing and working for the women. So probably it was worthwhile to make it visible.
En tant que secrétaire général,
liggéey bi jaar ba wala mu koy siin di ko seet sama liggéey si sant am naa si jàngat bu baax a baax a baax donc su ma xëyee suba ñu liggéey si dinaa sawar pour liggéey sama yaram daal dinaa sentir ne sama yaram sawar la.
ñu yëgal ñu si kaw dindi li nga xam ne mooy ardoise defal couleur bu bëgg nga gis artiste yoo xam ne suñu liggéey bari dinañ mën a yëgal ay taal si kaw di def loolu.
She said that they work on the concrete roof.
No, they would like to.
Yeah, but what will they do?
They are working with traditional cereals. So usually, like everybody eats rice imported from Asia in Senegal, and this is a group that tries to promote local grains. And so they do couscous, they dry the grains, and then they do couscous and flour and other things of those grains. That's what are on those big drying things on the courtyard. Yeah, so this is my last slide, and try to connect the topic is somehow that if you engage with the people, then it's easy to get a locally attached outcome of what you do, because then the contribution of the people will build roots locally, and then also you learn what are the local ways of living and using space. And this also goes not only as we being foreigners working in a different culture, but thinking of an architect, for instance, a Tanzanian architect who most probably had been studying abroad and then coming back and being a totally different income level as the people he or she would design for, then to learn how to kind of empathize with these people who will use the buildings. And this will also help you to build something more sustainable according to local climate and according to how people want to live. And probably this contributes to possibility to be happy in your space, I think. Thank you.
We have time for questions, comments. Come on.
Yes.
How did you get finance to the projects, and how do they get money for their everyday life there in the centers?
It depends from project to project. So in the first project, we have got a lot of finance from Finnish foundations. We continuously applying for finance for being able to travel and doing our work. But then the projects we're usually doing in collaboration with the local NGO. So the local, and mostly we try to find out that there is finance for the construction already when we start the project. Even if unfortunately in many cases the project hasn't been built anyway, even if it had looked positive in the beginning. But yeah, so and then through the collaboration with the NGOs, it's also somebody who is kind of involved in the activities. So for instance, for the hostel in Tanzania, there is a local and British NGO, which is run by a Finnish woman, and that's how we got in touch with it, or that's probably why she found us. So this NGO has been working and gathering money for these girls for a long time already, and they have built hostels before, but with the traditional, or the way the Tanzanian government builds hostels, but now this is a new model, and actually the Tanzanian government now, the local government wanted to take this model to become the new governmental model. And for the shelter house, in the Kvieko shelter house, the Kvieko is an organization that has been working for the rights of women since 1986. And they have funding from multiple international organizations. The main activity is to give legal support for women with trouble, so they take the cases to court. So that's why it's an organization that mostly have lawyers employed. So it depends from project to project. But this is also probably why we are not doing this full time.
And those actual workers then, how is the collaboration with them functioning? Is it different from workers here in Finland?
Of course there is the language barrier, but usually there is a local contractor that we choose. We are trying to choose the contractor with care, so that the contractor would be willing to have a similar approach as we have, and also employing as many local people as possible in the process of construction. So in most cases we've been very lucky, but now unfortunately in Tanzania we chose an NGO that is doing work in Dar es Salaam, and I've been collaborating before a lot, and when we went with students from Aalto University to Dar es Salaam, we worked with this NGO, and they also do construction, but then we didn't understand that they didn't have any local activities in Iringa, which they said they had, and so now it has been like that the contractor has come from Dar es Salaam, and it hasn't worked out very well actually. So the result of the quality is not what we were hoping for and expecting. But luckily there is other projects or other buildings to come, and this was the first prototype.
So it's not like in I made projects in Brazil, and something happens after 1 week, which should happen immediately and stuff like that.
Yes, it's a lot like that.
It's okay, yeah.
That things are postponed, and yeah. But that is kind of also not always, I think, in these kinds of projects. It's kind of good that things go slowly.
So people are happy, and
yeah, and then there is there's the time to get used, and there's the time to find if there is any problems. Yes?
I'm interested in what experience and learning you might re-import from those places back, as it were, to here or to Western Europe. I'm particularly interested in your interest in the hand, the importance of that. But thinking through how to introduce handiwork and that personal touch into Western housing production, for example, is quite a challenge. So I'm interested in how it's affected your thinking about designing and building, as it were, in the developed, so-called developed world. Are there lessons or things that have, even if you haven't been able to implement them, in terms of your thinking about what we might learn in reverse?
Yeah. Like as an example, I think this of Auli architects, the housing where in Arabian Ranta, the first, I think there are more now coming up where the homes are not finalized when you buy them. That you're buying a kind of empty space of 2 floors, and then you can have it constructed yourself. So that in that way there would be the possibility for people to be engaged in the process of building their own home, and also have the possibility to use their hands or do do more kinds of, like their own ornaments or their own design, the things. And that would be a good way of doing it. Otherwise, of course, like to do mass production of something, it doesn't go together very well. But otherwise, from like cultural-wise, what was the first which kind of made me want to continue to do this kind of work was the way of seeing, which doesn't have to do with architecture, but it has to do with happiness. It's how people who doesn't own anything still have a joy in life, which I felt is lacking so much in our culture. That even if we have all the means, but there is not that joy of kind of just like that is danced out visibly all over. I think that's what keeps us going in a way.
Are you happy now? Then thank you, Helena.
Thank you.
Very great you could come. Sorry, my brain is like, it's only one brain cell left and it's slow. But now we have a half an hour break and there's a nice cafe on the other side of the road. Because we can't have any serving in this space. I'm sorry. But it's called, what is this cafe called? Fika. And they know you are coming. But you have to pay yourself, sorry. And after half an hour, like 1:30, we're going to have two fantastic persons here. Jan-Erik from Denmark, from the Danish art collective N55, and Olavi Koponen, architect who works in France, in Grenoble. So I hope you all will be back after the coffee. And there is a special table for the lecturers there, reserved for you. And AmosLAB is paying for you. Okay, guys. Thank you. Vai ihan semmoinen oma puheen. Joo. No siinä on vähän spoileja. Juotava. Ja siis Hintsanen on tulossa, mutta se on jossakin kilpailujyryssä, mutta se tulee.
Ai hän on tulossa. On se hyvä. Hei.
Terve.
Hei. Kaikki hyvin.
There's a table there in the cafe. Mario, go and check the table with the guys.
Good work, man.
This was interesting. It's good that you feel different input.
I love the King George VI. Because I think you studied once during your whole presentation. I didn't notice before the relationship between, it's obvious, these structures and the trees outside.
Yeah, usually when they have lectures, they have all this down there. But I was very, I really wanted to have it a little bit more.
Well, you can see it. You can see it, can't you? The concrete trees. I'll come and eat with you afterwards.